This is Envision Self-Healing Podcast, episode number 30. Hi, I'm Will Fuller.
And I'm Richard Miller.
And we are the co-creators of EnvisionSelfHealing.com and are dedicated in helping you improve your eyesight and quality of life
by taking healing into your own hands. The topic today is understanding a holistic approach to natural vision improvement, Part 2, the brain. And in the second half of the podcast, we're going to be answering an email question from a website user who asks us, do I really have to do all the exercises on the free programs?
So Richard, how's the world of self-healing treating you this week?
Well, as we're doing this podcast, my contractor is packing up and cleaning out all the debris and dust from my house. So as of next week, I will be nearly contractor-free, nearly worker-free.
Fantastic. We've got guys running around the house checking the air vents and the electricity. And, we're quite lucky to fit this podcast in, I think.
Yeah, there's guys scurrying around, finishing up stuff. So that's a good sign for my life, getting back on track a little bit.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I bet you're looking forward to it.
Oh, so looking forward to it.
The question is, when this is finished, is something else going to replace the busyness?
I hope not. So, no, I've learned... I was saying to you this morning, I think 6 months ago, I forget how... Yeah, 6 months ago, I made the proclamation on this podcast, I believe, saying... I've decided to rent and not buy because it would eat up my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that. I bought. And it did eat up my life.
Yeah.
And there is the reality that things like this do come along in your life and you do have to just cope.
Yeah, making the best of it. And I think that you make the right decision you went head first in and just jumped right in the idea of just getting it done instead of having it spend a year and eat in a year of your time.
Yeah.
But maybe less crazy than just go for it.
Yeah. So I did it in 3 months, which I think was a very good span of time to get it done in. But
let's hope so anyway. We don't know yet. They're not finished.
It's true. It's true. So one insight I came to yesterday, which resulted from my awareness of my sense of, I'm going to call it sense of time.
Okay.
The last few days. And I was discussing this with one of my friends who's a meditation buddy. Okay. We talk about time quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But he was saying, and I agree with him with this, is that when you're under that much pressure, you actually become less efficient. It's like, I think to a certain degree, pressure keeps you flowing. You know, you can react to pressure well, but at a certain point, you become so short-sighted that like you're running around in circles, basically. And that's where I hit a couple days this week.
Oh,
it's
okay.
like you think you're being very efficient and you're feeling so much pressure that you have to just focus on what you're doing. But at a certain point, you know, you lose, it's like looking close, isn't it? It really is. It's very similar to what we talk about. You need some distance looking. I needed to get beyond the little sphere that I had created around what I had to do.
Yeah, take a step back.
And take a step back and get the long view, just like we do in myopia. So I was developing mental myopia. And it's not good for you, just the way our normal myopia isn't good for you. So
it's funny you say that. I noticed that if I'm busy and I've got to leave the apartment, the other day, I think before I was coming over here to do some work, and I was trying to get the dishes done and clear all the way the juicing stuff and put things in the fridge and get this done and get this done. And I was I was doing bits of everything.
Exactly.
I was doing all this stuff for bits of it. And in the end, I chipped a plate and I did all this stuff. And I was just like, it just wasn't worth it in the end. And what you were saying before actually about the having that peak of focus. There is something in the sports science and the sports psychology world called the inverted U theory. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I've never heard that.
So it's if you turn a U upside down, I don't know why they just call it the N theory.
Right. Well, it's not really a letter, but yeah, okay.
So it's upside down. And the idea is that the middle of the chart, is the peak.
Right.
So if you're right there at the top of the U, the optimum level, then you're functioning at your peak as a sportsman. So let's pick a high focus sport. Let's say tennis. So if you're before it, you're not pumped up enough, you're not focused enough,
right?
You're not achieving. And if you go over the other side of the U, or the other side of the hill, so to speak, then again your performance goes down because you're too focused, you're too
myopic, really,
So there is that perfect.
Well, that's what I was experiencing, exactly what you're describing. Because actually, the 3-month period, that having that, like, I got to get it done in 3 months, that actually helped me to get things done efficiently.
But now you're at that deadline.
The deadline, and then I'm not functioning well. I'm chipping plates, like you say. So anyway, I'm happy. I guess I'm looking forward to getting back to a comfort level where I'm more at the top of that U, as you described. So,
Well, maybe now you could. Maybe your first eye exercise to focus on after all this is distance looking.
Distance looking. It sounds really nice. And I have a distance looking spot not far from my house that I'm looking forward to sitting at. Excellent. Rather than getting up at 7 a.m. and meeting my contractor, who's a great contractor. I like him a lot. But I'd much rather walk the half block to the spot and sip tea and look at the distance. So.
Well, so when do you reckon the end of next week? I'm just trying to preempt where I'm trying to put you to another deadline on the podcast here of when you're back on track. I
think it's bits and pieces from now on for probably a few more weeks, but it's like, 1 day a week, bits and pieces. So I think it basically is done.
Fantastic. Yep. So next week we'll be hearing hopefully a new song.
Yes, hopefully. And how about your week?
Good. I was able to spend quite a bit of time focusing on the eye exercises again this week. Ironically, your busy time means that I can spend a little bit more time focusing on the exercises a little bit more.
Yeah.
And real interesting week. I wish we had done this podcast on Tuesday, I guess. I had a bit of a mini breakthrough on Tuesday, and we had a bit of a chat about it. And then, as I always say with these progresses, you sort of progress, and then the next day it's just old news, and you sort of move on, and it's not as amazing anymore. But I guess it was more the observation of engaging the brain, which is what we're going to be talking about. The brain in particular, and the topic of the week this week. But I realized that a big part, instead of just exercising the eyes with the flashing lights and all the rest of it, is to purposely engage the brain. And I talked a little bit about that before with the tennis ball. Remember, I said I was learning to juggle in my periphery.
Right.
So I'm throwing and catching the ball, and I've been doing that and being very active with it. And then I noticed a part of it is, instead of necessarily trying to force the vision, a separate exercise could be just to sort of sit back, just like you were talking about before, taking sort of a distance almost, and just being present in the periphery. Very, very Buddhist, I know. Instead of being present in the now, you're being present in the periphery. And what I did is I did my normal sort of meditation practice, which is very nice for me because I've sort of had to replace my breathing meditation that I do
with peripheral meditation.
With palming.
Oh, okay, there we go.
So I've not, it's sort of one or the other for me. So, but this time I was able to combine the peripheral vision exercise with meditating. Ooh. And I sort of created a peripheral meditation that I've been working on now for the last few days. And it's real interesting. It's a case of sort of sitting there and just where you focus the mind, just to focus in the periphery. And even though it might not necessarily be clear or it's fuzzy, and you sort of watch those negative thoughts come and go, and you sort of just stay with it, and there shouldn't be any strain. It's just you relaxing, meditating, experiencing the periphery.
Now I'm having my memory of Tuesday's conversation. I'm with you now. Yeah.
And I guess the thing for me is I realized that I need to spend more time in my periphery, and the more time I spend in it, then the more the brain is going to connect to it, and the more I'm going to use it on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Because just like with dominance, if you've got a stronger dominant eye, which again I think we might talk a little bit about today. That if you've got this, if there's something part of the brain that's dominating, then your brain always favors what's dominating. So for me, that's my central vision.
Right.
So I could maybe spend half an hour, even an hour as I do in my peripheral vision exercises. But then for the next, 17, 18 hours of the day, I'm in central vision mode,
right,
so to speak. Mm-hmm. So I sort of needed to think of a way of how can I start working the periphery into my daily life that little bit more. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking that by sitting there, meditating, relaxing, it's not a negative experience. Because a lot of the time, like I say, when you're using your periphery and you bump into something...
That's when you notice your periphery, you bump into something else. You're more like, I didn't notice my periphery because I bumped into something.
Yeah,
it's sort of a negative reinforcement,
And it makes you avoid it.
Yeah.
It's there's embarrassment, there's fear, that there's so much that comes along when you do something like that.
Yeah.
That it's negative reinforcement, so... what you're doing is you're telling the brain central vision good, peripheral vision bad, and you reinforce the central vision.
Yeah.
So this time, what I was doing is just trying to let all of it go, sit there, and where I do the meditation, I've got one window to my left, one window to my right, curtains open, so there's light coming in both sides. I sit in the middle of the room so that I've got light coming from both left and right, and then I just try and be observant, and I'm now working on developing more exercises in how you can engage a bit more with the periphery, because I notice that obviously with the periphery it responds to movement. Well, when you're sitting in a stationary room, one thing I discovered this morning is that the periphery tends to fade a little bit, so I'm developing and coming up with some new protocols and ways to work on this. But one observation that I did find interesting is when I had that sort of breakthrough, it was on a Tuesday when I realized that I can sort of hold this periphery. And I also combined it into walking. So I then moved it into walking meditation, holding the periphery whilst walking in a slow pace. And then I sped it up again to sort of a normal walk, so that I'm training myself to function daily whilst holding the peripheral vision.
Right.
So, and I was doing very successful. I was walking around the apartment. I was seeing more than I'd ever seen before in my periphery. At one point, I could see a whole door frame above the sides and the bottom, which is something I've never seen before.
Wow.
I've only ever really seen the top of it.
Right.
Or a side of it or something. So for me to see that, it was amazing. And I walked around the apartment and I could navigate pretty well in my periphery, walking around tables and chairs and all the rest of it. So I was feeling, pretty smug with myself and achievement. And then that evening I went to the farmer's market and it was disastrous. I was walking into tables, walking into people, and one thing I was trying to figure it out.
This is going to sound really Buddhist, but it was probably yourself got control of the situation and you couldn't quite relax into it or something like that.
Yeah, I did try tuning into it a little bit. Anyone that's listened to these podcasts before will hear me talk about there's so many factors when it comes to being able to use your periphery when you are in this situation, like having retinitis pigmentosa. Obviously, anxiety is a big one. You start getting anxious.
Right.
I was with my fiance, and like I said before, about how I compare vision, my vision to her vision. And then it makes you feel like it becomes a negative thing, even though for me, I could have actually improved at that point in time at the farmer's market. Right. But I was comparing it to her, and I noticed that my focus is on following her. Is she at this store? Is she next to me and I can't see her? All this. My focus is shifted where I'm just walking down the street by myself. Yep. It's very much me leading.
That makes
what's
sense.
going on, so I can tune into the periphery and hold it.
Right.
The third thing I noticed is that it was coming towards the evening, so it's getting darker.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was walking around the apartment, there was light coming in through the windows, and then you've got the darkness of inside, so you've got that contrast of light and dark. Whereas in, say, the farmer's market, it was just pretty much a shade of grey.
Right.
And it was a little bit more difficult. And then today, I've been thinking about it for a couple of days now. And then I was walking down my street and I thought, I'm surprised that I had this much difficulty in the farmers market, because I'm noticing trees and buildings, and now I'm noticing details like handrails leading up to the stairs. I'm noticing all this, and I thought, what is this all about? Yeah. And then I walked down to the bus stop, and somebody sort of was walking one direction, and then chopped had changed and went in the other direction, and I nearly bumped into them.
Right.
And then it dawned on me that the reason why is that walls and buildings are very predictable. They're stationary. They're in one place.
Sure.
And I can just sort of focus on the periphery, let go. What's there is there. People are a lot more unpredictable.
Yeah.
And
especially women. I'm sorry.
And they make their own mind up. So when I'm walking around the farmers market, there's these little dogs walking around. There's people walking in front of you. There's people jumping in to get the spinach. There's all different tillers are in different areas, and some people are talking to you, some people aren't. It's all this different that's going on. It's almost I want to avoid the word control, but you can't control the environment,
right.
So it just makes it that much more difficult. But I was pleased because I was trying to figure out why, what was going on there. Makes sense. And I'm really trying to communicate this with people, because anyone else that might have got the achievement, I improved my periphery, and then that evening they go out,
right,
and they bump into something, or like the other day I was standing there, my fiance was right next to me, and I didn't even realize. And I was like, what am I doing here? I'm doing all these exercises, I'm having all these breakthroughs, and I can't see my periphery.
Yeah.
And it just highlights how important it is that it's your achievement. You can only compare yourself to yourself, never to anyone else. And I guess it's all about keeping that motivation, which is difficult, right? When you've got such close emotional ties with something like a condition,
right?
And I guess you just keep plodding on, and I suppose I wouldn't have reached this point if I hadn't have kept going in the first place. So,
well, maybe tell people to be aware that they're going to have these moments of self-doubt, that to not discount those moments when you go, yeah, this is a breakthrough, I am really seeing better. That be aware that, in 3 hours you could be saying, oh, I just made that up. To be aware that that's a pitfall you're going to hit.
And again, that's the reason why we encourage the vision diary so much.
Yeah.
Because people just forget.
Yeah.
Just like body stuff. Like say you've got a tight shoulder.
Yeah.
And we release the shoulder, you get nice and relaxed in the shoulder. And a week later, the person comes back to us and we say, oh, your shoulder's a lot looser. And they're like, really? It feels the same as it did a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And there's just, the brain just adapts.
Yeah.
I guess. But on top of this, I guess it's just that much more difficult, especially when you're investing time, money and emotions into doing these exercises. And everyone just wants results now. But I'm still quietly confident. I'm really enjoying, especially this week with the breakthrough that I had. I don't think that it's the be-all and end-all exercise, but it's just another one to add to the repertoire in the discovery of periphery and how it all works. I do walk down the street and I just think, you lucky peripheral people. Life is so much easier with peripheral vision. It really is.
Try central vision problems. I'm the opposite. I got to get my breakthroughs growing in central vision.
We'll get there. We'll get
there.
Yeah. Wait till you've got your breakthrough in your housing, and then and then we're done.
All right.
Excellent. Well, I think it's about a good time to move on to topic of the week.
And the topic of the week this week is Understanding a Holistic Approach to Natural Vision Improvement, Part 2, The Brain. And actually, we have already started talking about it, as usual.
And
I'm anxious to talk about this.
Yeah, it's something that, just to recap a little bit on what we're doing here in this series, this is going to be a 5-part series. And we're basically trying to get you guys to understand that self-healing isn't just about improving your eyes, or indeed vision improvement isn't just about working with the eyes, and that it's a whole holistic approach.
Right. It's a whole body approach, and that includes the mind and the brain. And so the reason I was almost going to launch into it when we were talking about your week, you reminded me on Tuesday, we had this great discussion about the brain and neuroplasticity and how you are in some ways challenging your brain's tendency to ignore your periphery by allowing or making space for or relaxing into seeing in your periphery that has always been a kind of blocked for you.
Yeah. I feel like it's been a big part of this breakthrough, especially as I've been looking into a lot of neuroplasticity these last few months, and it really gives you that encouragement, and it helps direct you a little bit more. And the idea that the brain gets, it's use it or lose it. If you don't use something, then the brain's ability to function with it, or the amount of, I don't know, on a computer sense, usage, I guess, dedicated to that shrinks.
Right.
So for me, I really feel like my peripheral vision usage is a tiny amount in my brain right now.
Right.
And central vision is massive. Just like your right hand probably has a lot more space dedicated to it in your brain than your left hand.
Well, it's really just like if you had some, say, muscular or nerve problem in your one arm, and you started not using it, and you started using the other arm more and more and more, that arm would get weaker and weaker. It's just the same thing.
So what we're saying here is that it's twofold. It's the actual structure itself is getting weaker, which for me would be the rod cells are getting dormant and weak and shutting off. And then the second part is the actual brain and actual physical structure that is becoming less and less. So one thing that gives me hope and also more motivation to keep going with these exercises and keeping with holding the periphery is the more I'm using it, the more neuroconnections the brain is starting to develop in using the periphery. It's a physical structure is being created, which it's amazing.
Yeah, and this goes... you started reading neuroplasticity right after we went to Brazil, as I remember.
What happened was I was talking to our lecturer, Fernanda, and I really need to email her and let her know this, actually. And over dinner, over one of our massive kilo meals that we were having. And I was talking to her about using the periphery and how I felt that we really needed to connect the brain. It wasn't enough just to do the exercises. And she talked about the idea of looking at something in your periphery and then look back again and then holding that image in your mind that was there. And that's how this sort of started and snowballed a little bit.
Oh, okay.
From there.
The thing I remember, though, was her saying that I think we reported this in the podcast as well, but her saying as soon as something is compromised in your vision, that the brain prefers perfection in its vision. Remember this?
Yeah.
And so your periphery being imperfect makes the brain want to shut it off, even though there's still data coming through. And that's one of the things you're fighting is the brain's... It's the brain again. It's not your eyes in this case. It's the brain wanting to shut off that part of your vision.
And it's exactly the same as having a dominant eye. The brain is going to favor the dominant eye because it reacts 300 milliseconds quicker than the other eye. A lot of the time it has better color contrast,
more motor control.
Yeah, it's maybe better acuity if you've not overworked it to deterioration. Then the brain starts favoring that eye more and more and more. Just the same as a dominant hand. You favor that hand, and then that means that you end up using it all the time, and you never really want to use your non-dominant hand. A good example of that is trying to brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. I tried it several times and I convinced myself that I was going to do it. And after about the fourth day, I just think that I can't do this. And I guess another example might be things like blind spots. How you don't notice the blind spot in the other eye because the brain is choosing the good vision.
Right.
And it fills in the blanks for you.
Right.
Which is great.
Well, and it just... Unfortunately, it makes vision conditions even worse because some physical imperfection in a neuron or something becomes something the brain shuts off completely. So it just compounds your problem. So you do have to deal with the brain, basically. That brings the brain back into this formula.
And I guess it's almost like survival of the fittest. It's almost like natural selection.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down that Darwinian route right now. We'll save that for another day. But you could argue that we're trying to survive here, and the brain wants to choose what is best.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, it doesn't always pick what's healthiest. It just picks kind of
what's just what's best.
Yeah, what's best for survival in the short term.
And if it's anything that we've learned throughout any of this, if you don't use something, then you lose it. So it's just a downward spiral. And one thing that I've found so fascinating with my discoveries over this last month is how the idea of how little my lack of periphery is to do with retinitis pigmentosa.
Right.
And that, in fact, the disease itself, or the actual damaged cells, I now feel is actually a pretty small percentage of the peripheral field lost.
Right.
Because I guess that can only really explain this increase of periphery. Because if it was actual cells rebuilding, I feel like it would be a lot slower. Although you could argue that I've spent the last 6 years working on my eye, so it's not been a...
Yeah, but you've made a dramatic shift in the last month or two.
Yeah.
And that doesn't argue for the cells rebuilding themselves that quickly. Yeah.
And also, because it first occurred when I went to the ophthalmologist in Moorfields Hospital in London, and she said, "Your RP's looking pretty good." I'm sure she didn't. I'm sure she didn't. I'm sure she
say that very often.
I'm sure she didn't use those words.
No.
She said they're looking. It's not progressed much.
Right.
It's still in its early stages. So for me, I'm trying to get my head around, if there's 120 million cells in the periphery, only 6 million in our central vision, then I don't know how many X of those millions of rod cells are actually affected by the RP. But what about even if it's 20 million? What about the other 100 million? What's going on there? And it must just be a case that the brain is selecting what is clear and. What did I call it the other day? Fuzzy. I called the periphery fuzzy. I was amazed how fuzzy the periphery actually was. And my brain didn't want to know about it. Why do you want to look at something that's fuzzy?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So natural selection there, I like to sort of think of it as a dominating brain. It's always choosing what's best and then goes with it. And this is why things like eye obstruction is so important. This is also why... we talked a bit more about the distance looking, about myopia. Remember how we said that if you get used to looking near all the time, then you're using the part of the brain that wants to focus near, and we're not using the distance looking part of the brain. So it's almost like we lose that ability, physical and mental ability, to see in the distance.
Well, I was just going to bring this up, actually, ironically. That when we went to lunch and I went to the ATM machine and I was noticing, I feel my brain tells me I have to be a certain distance to read the screen. And I noticed if I backed up, I could still read it. But it's like my brain has been habituated to seeing the letters a certain size in my field of view. And that's the size it has to be for me to read it.
Yeah, it's
the
almost
same
habit
form. Yeah,
it's amazing. And I think I've talked about this before as well. On a computer screen, as soon as a small letter comes up, without even thinking, I lean forward into the laptop.
Yep.
I don't think to try and read it sitting back first or shifting, which is of course everything that we should be doing.
Yeah.
So I really look for. I mean, this has been quite a big thing for us, and the more we research it, the more we realize that this science is so interconnected with the vision exercises that we do and our holistic approach here to self-healing and vision improvement. So we're certainly going to revert back to this topic a lot more in the future and reviews, a few more books and whatnot. But another big part of the brain that vision is so involved in, and that's memory.
Right.
And I mean, we learned in Brazil that 90% of our vision is initially from the brain.
Right.
So it's almost, your vision is almost predetermined.
Yeah.
Which is why we always say when we have clients that look at the chart and we say, okay, now look with your weaker eye or the non-dominant eye. And they go, I can't see anything. I'm blind in that eye.
Right.
There's nothing to see there. And we go, okay, well, just have a look. What do you think you see? And they're like, oh, maybe a letter E. And we're like, yeah, perfect. That's exactly what the letter is. I thought you couldn't see anything. And they're like, oh, well, it's not clear. Well, hold on a second. 1 minute you're blind. Now you're not clear. And they're like, well, it's the top line. And we say, well, have a look at the second line down. Can you maybe take out, maybe a C and a B? I don't know. Yeah, a C and a B. That's exactly what it is.
It's true.
Oh, well, it's not that clear. So, you keep going and going and going.
Right.
So they go from being blind to being able to read the 2040 line or something, ridiculous. So all the time we're telling ourselves that we're blind in that eye, or the vision's really weak in that eye, or that particular part of our vision is weak. Well, guess what? Mm-hmm. It's going to be because, your brain is dictating a lot of the time what it is that you're actually seeing.
Right.
And you were saying before about how the memory plays such a big role in identifying objects.
Right. And so given that the brain is 90% of the vision and your memory is a huge part of your brain, then it makes sense that memory would be a huge part of vision as well. So that's why we actually encourage people to not only use charts that they don't know, but also be comfortable using a chart you already know the letters. Because in your real world, you're walking around seeing things you already know, and you have memories of them, and that fills in a lot of your vision is the memory, and that's a natural, normal thing. So a lot of the times our clients say, I already know that chart.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't mean anything because I already know that chart. But actually that's the way you work around your world is you have a memory of your world. And that's part of your vision. So just accept that part.
Yeah.
And then we also want you to look at charts you don't know, just for that part of your vision as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's so funny because that's really part of the brain that's seeing as well, because you're seeing something on the line and you're telling yourself your vision hasn't improved.
Yeah.
You're not seeing it clearly. It's just memory. So you disassociate with it, and you reinforce the negative seeing again.
Right.
So by using different charts, you get it right, and you've got no choice but to accept
true
that you're seeing it. But certainly with, in particular, if it's a difficult line that you're used to, then, something that you're familiar with. And I always like using the example of something like the McDonald's logo. If I went around San Francisco now without the word McDonald's on it and just the golden arches and asked people what that was, everybody would know what it is. If I held it from 20, if I made it real small and held it 20 feet from everyone, I'm pretty sure that a good 90% of the people could identify it as McDonald's.
I was just thinking McDonald's could change their name to McDougal's. And no one would, if they didn't tell anyone, no one would probably notice.
Yeah. In fact, people would just think their vision's getting worse. So they need to get a stronger prescription.
No, they would probably see it as McDonald's. They probably just wouldn't even see it.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
But if we took a foreign logo that you didn't recognize, then people just wouldn't be able to identify it as well.
Right. And that's natural, just to accept that.
Yeah. And also with, I know with reading, they say that you only really pick up the first couple of letters and the last couple of letters, and the memory fills in the rest.
Middle, yeah.
So it's interesting when we start reading that way that we start appreciating that.
Right.
So certainly then, memory has such a big part of our vision. If we are familiar with lettering, if we're familiar with what's going on there, with the objects and our environment, then our vision is going to feel better.
Right.
And I guess a lot of it also, sometimes if you're going to a new environment, just like I was saying with the anxiety, then your vision can feel worse.
Right.
I know I was saying before, all this new work that I've been doing with my periphery, I've been really starting to appreciate how much memory plays a role in vision. Like say I'm looking at you now, and at the top left-hand corner of me, there's some sort of a dark object that I've not really noticed before. Now I'm going to assume, and I know it's not now because I've just remembered that the only light is above me here. I would assume that is a light fixture in the top left-hand
but you had
corner.
A memory of where the light is in the room,
right? Yeah, it's to my right, and now I just remembered that the guy came in to do the
the heating.
So I'm assuming it's a heating bed. Am I right?
It is.
It is. So. And that was just memory. It's just a dark object there.
Yeah.
The memory fitted in the rest.
And I bet as you remember it, you could almost say, "Oh, I see fins now," or something, some sort of detail. Or the shape is more rectangular than it was before. Yeah. Stuff like that. Yeah.
So I'm really experiencing firsthand how much of an impact memory has on our vision. And it really makes me realize that when I'm in a new social group, or a new building or a new house, that it takes me time to familiarize myself with the surroundings. And when I am, then the memory takes up the rest.
Yeah.
And I guess that's another reason why I was saying before with the farmers market, everything changing.
Yeah.
I can't hold a memory of where the people are going. I can hold a memory of which particular stalls might be busier than before, or a memory of where people are paying cash, or where people come in and go out, or all this stuff. But I can never predict how people are going to walk and hold that memory. So we're all fascinating there. And also a big factor here, again, we're going to talk about a lot, is that it's the brain that sees.
Right.
The eye is just designed is just a light receptor. It just picks up light. That's its only job.
Yeah.
The eye doesn't see.
Yeah.
So the more we can work with the brain in vision improvement, which is a big reason, you just need to let go of the Western view of your eyes cannot improve, they will only get worse. All the time you hold that view, then you're stuck in that place. Whereas if you can sort of just let go for a bit and just say, let's give these a go, let's just put all my previous knowledge to one side as far as what I think I can and can't improve with my vision, and just see what
I just thought happens. Of a good way of thinking about this is if you have vision problems, think of yourself, this is really nice, think of yourself as a stroke patient. So if you think about it, stroke patients are actually some of the main subjects for discovering neuroplasticity. So that a part of their brain was damaged, and then they utilize a different part of their brain to recover the function they lost through the stroke.
Yeah.
If you think of your eye, your visual system the same way, it's like, okay, you've lost some of your periphery, and now maybe you're not getting the cells back in your eye, but you're remapping your brain. So it just brings the brain back into the visual picture.
Yeah.
And in the more appropriate way of think of yourself as remapping your brain rather than fixing the eye so much. And
that's really exciting for me, because even if the doctors are right, there's nothing you can do about RP. You're stuck with it. Once the damage is done, it's done. I'm not working with the RP right now. I'm working with my brain, which I'm going to say there's nothing wrong with. A lot of other people might say otherwise, I'm sure.
Well, those are incurable problems that you have in your brain.
Yeah, those are just personality problems.
There you go.
So it means this is something different. This is working with the visual system,
right?
Not with the eye. So whatever your condition is, regardless, you can there's always a different angle to work at. You can try and improve it one way or the other. So it's worth investing that time. Okay, great. Well, we could certainly go on for many hours about this topic, but we'll certainly save that for another day. And we're going to move on to the question of the week.
And the question of the week this week comes through email, and it's commenting on the website and on, in particular, our free programs we have on the website. And the question is very simple. Do I really have to do all those exercises?
And this is actually it should be a simple answer, but it's actually a little bit complex.
It is.
And we sort of have to make sure that, we don't send any wrong messages. We don't want to just straight out and go,
nah, you don't do that.
Just do whatever you want.
Well, let's go through a little of the history of how we created those programs, in that we had to come up with sort of a generic program for each condition and cover as much as we, cover a general person who had that condition.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to leave anything out. So we probably did put in more than if we'd seen an individual and knew their individual case.
Well, it was really, we spent a good couple of months just trying to, because it's like, wow, this exercise is really important. But
that's right, yeah.
We had already reached, we were trying to do more than like
too much,
vision exercises or something.
Yeah.
So we were really trying to be selective, and it's very difficult, and especially throughout all these podcasts, all our videos, the whole website, it's all about you are an individual.
Yeah.
And you can never compare yourself to someone else's vision, someone else's program. It's really about you, what works for you, your lifestyle, your personality, and all the rest of it. So, but I still think we did a very good job.
We did do a good job,
of keeping it generic. So I think certainly as far as the eye exercises are concerned, we would say that you still want to try and keep to all those eye exercises as much as possible.
Right.
A big thing for me is you're going to get out of this practice what you put in. So, the idea of just palming 10 minutes a day and then wondering why you haven't overcome night blindness.
Yeah.
Doesn't really bow well, and everyone's looking for that quick fix. And that is a big reason why we created the Eyesight Express, because we took those big programs and we really narrowed them down to just 4 exercises. Mm-hmm. And then these were sort of a quick start guide, introduction. It meant you were doing 40 minutes a day. You were doing those eye exercises consistently. And then maybe when time improved or it was proven to you that these eye exercises could have benefit, then you're more likely to dedicate more time to it. So, but it is important, it amazes me a lot of the time, because a lot of these conditions we work with are so-called incurable.
Right.
And no one else in the world would say that it can be improved, or certainly no one in the West, or Western medicine would say it's improved. And then we go, well, here's these exercises you could improve. And then people go, but do I have to do all of them?
And yet some people are willing to travel to China or India and get acupuncture here or there. And, yet spending, an hour a day is way too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
So, but I think with the programs, we could say there's 2 issues here. One is maybe the vision exercises, which we're encouraging you to do as much as possible and try not to cut back on those. The second aspect, I guess, with these programs is that, just like this whole topic here, we're talking about a holistic approach to self-healing. So we include body exercises, self-massage, stretches, hot and cold application. And we also include mind exercises, journaling, breaking the habit of glasses. And I'm assuming more to the point that this is what this person might be referring to.
Right.
Do I need to do all those exercises every day? In which case, I guess you could say is a couple of hours. Well, even then, we're talking about incurable diseases here. In theory, you should, want to dedicate a couple of hours a day. Being realistic, which is what we're all about trying to do here, and get everybody doing these exercises and not just a select few. I would probably say that try and stick to the eye exercises daily. Mm-hmm. The body and mind exercises, maybe you do every other day. Maybe you do the tennis balls on a Monday, the stretches on a Wednesday, and sort of space it out a little bit. Write your journal once a week instead of every day, and sort of play with it that way. But I think it's really important that we don't just go, do whatever you like. Just choose whatever exercises, because people aren't going to see results. And then all we're going to hear is, well, these eye exercises don't work.
Right.
Self-healing doesn't work. You don't know what you're talking about. So, it really is a case of getting out what you put in. And as much as we would love to just say, just do 1 or 2 exercises, 10 minutes a day, and sort of tell you what you want to hear, we're sort of, our point here is to try and get you to improve your eyesight, not to just please your time constraints, or we're not in the business of just telling you what you want to hear, which I guess makes this job that much more difficult.
Right. One thing I'm reminded of is how we would treat a client if we had an individual consultation with them. So say someone had a very tight mental attitude about their vision, like they had a lot of anxiety about it or something like that. Then we actually might, in some ways, start out by emphasizing more, accepting your vision, sort of the mind approach to vision as a way of calming down that anxiety.
Yeah.
And likewise, if we had somebody with very tight shoulders who happened to have, glaucoma, let's say, we might really focus on their shoulders first. So it is individual to the individual.
Yeah.
So,
and I just thought now you were just talking there about clients. I'm going to completely contradict myself now. And
exactly.
when we first have clients, we only ever introduce one or two eye exercises at a time.
Yeah.
We gradually build the program. That's why we we suggest meeting on a regular basis, because we slowly build the program to a point where you then have your hour or two a day that you've eased in slowly, instead of just like this email. Wow, look at all these exercises. I can't do all of these.
Yeah.
I guess.
So I think in general, what we're saying is we did our best on the free programs, but they are generic.
Yeah.
And if you can't consult with us or something, then you are going to have to pick your way through and see what makes sense to you to emphasize. But in general, we emphasize the vision exercises in general.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed this week's Envision Self-Healing podcast, and next week's topic is going to be on the mind and indeed how that influences our vision in our 6 sessions here that we're going to be doing on understanding a holistic approach to natural vision improvement. And we're going through a few series here. If you want to find out a little bit more about what we're going to be doing in the future series, then go back to part 1, because we do a bit of a review there on all of it. Certainly think about this week before we talk about the mind next week. As you're working with your exercises, as you're going on about your daily life, try and think about how the brain is influencing your vision and indeed your program or even your condition, and really start trying to engage with what we're talking about here on our podcast. So if you want a little bit more information as well, you can head over to the Envision Self-Healing website, which is now up to speed again, which we're very pleased about. We won't go down that road.
Yeah. It's healed.
yeah, it wasn't so self-healing. Well, it was self-healing, actually, somehow.
It was a bit, yeah.
It just started working again this morning. Anyway, head over to the website and you'll see a free ebook over there called A Modern Day Guide for Improving Eyesight. And that gives a little bit more information on the basis of what we're talking about here, and some real basic principles of how you can improve your vision and how indeed our modern day life might have actually prevented good vision in the first place. You can also get your hands on some free programs that we've got on our website where we cover a variety of different conditions. So head over there and have a look at some of those programs and see if you can work on doing the exercises, even if you can't do all of them.
Yeah.
Then certainly pick at a few and see how you get on. And you could also keep up to date with Richard and I on our Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts. Just search for us over there in those given search engines. And indeed, if you're listening to this on YouTube, you could subscribe at the top of the page, or indeed on iTunes, you can also subscribe there. You could also just search for us in iTunes. I think Vision Improvement, we come up as number 1, which is great. And you'll find all our podcasts there, which is now 30. We seem to be...
we turned 30.
I don't know what we talk about.
And they're getting longer.
They are. So certainly check out some more podcasts and videos there. And we look forward to catching up with you guys next week. So good luck with your exercises this week, and happy healing.
And have a good week.